these relationships are people who are not someone who we happen to find off the street in New York. These are people who have helped me grow professionally. And then when things got boring in real estate cycles, we would turn around and, put our guns on them and ask them how we could help them. And for the past 7, 8 years now, for as long as AJ's been around, actually, what we've been doing is that we've been co-investing into the better way of saying anything that you can think of that's not Shark Tank. So no consumer discretionaries or anything like that, but people who are really experts in their field, especially as it relates to medicine. Biotechnology has always been seen as sort of something people don't like to really understand. It's very complicated, but now it's gotten a tremendous amount of attention and is actually seen as being more defensive than anything else. And for those of you who have been with us in certain opportunities, you should rest assured knowing that the collective, I guess you could say, business unit is really rising to the occasion, and that's really, really good. Thankfully, it's not anything like hotels or things like that. So Fred Nazem I've known for a while. I've known him for about 15 years. And it was just by happenstance that we were at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in 2013, and I was there with AJ. And that was a very infamous time, if you remember AJ. But you were out with Fred, and all of a sudden we wound up doing an investment with him, and the rest is history. And that's just a series of a lot of things. So we've known Fred for a while, and there's a history there, and he's, of course, helping us. He is a legend in his own right, and we're very privileged to be working with a person such as Fred. He has a lot of wise counsel to us, and we look forward to him being a part of our continuing burgeoning multifamily office, and also our Encore partners, our Dandrew Partners Encore Ventures fund too as well. So we like having the leadership. I always invest in people first. Experience really talks most and most strongly about this. And when you look at Fred's track record, he has a tremendous amount of success. So he is someone who we like working with, quite frankly. So Fred, known you for a while, and there's a lot of changes happening today. You and I have been talking. Feel like we've been talking a lot all day. Just to remind myself to bring our listeners back to where we are here. You have significant experience, both venture and also as a medical professional too as well. I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'm wondering if you could give a little introduction here as to who you are, so people can understand your state of mind or your mindset going into this pandemic, this viral outbreak that might have some people unnerved.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your generous introduction, and it's a privilege working with you, Sal, as you know. And I hope I can help a little bit, at least begin a conversation among us to come up with what is important and what is maybe not, because there's a lot of asymmetry of information that is being spread around there. Not everything is working, and there are things that are really very important to the eradication of this disease. Anyway, my background is that I started as a biochemist, went clear across the field to become a nuclear type and a quantum physicist for my PhD work. And then I found my way to Wall Street and got an MBA from Columbia and got started on the money side of things to just see how I can put the two together. I became one of the early venture capitalists in the country, one of the dozen, and the rest has been history. I've been building companies either as a financier, as a venturist who was very hands-on and working with the companies. And then I found out that I'm really pretty much more satisfied if I just build them. And so in the last 20 years, I've gone into actually I was an entrepreneur before I did a few companies, but seriously doing it and building it. And Rejuvenon, which is what Sal invested in, is one of my companies. And my focus with all of this has been into electronics and technology and its marriage to health and healthcare. So Rejuvenon is a telemedicine and healthcare and sick care platform pulled together. I can be happy to go into details of it. By way of additional background, I've had the good luck of being with great people like Sal and your partnership over the years, and among them, a lot of good things came out of it. And I've had over 60 some IPOs in my portfolio, um, quite a number of multi-billion-dollar companies, either directly that I did or through my funds. 7 of the companies that I did directly went public. That I was the founder, and a couple of them became, 3 of them became multi-billion dollars. You probably know a company like Cirrus Logic, which if you have a cell phone, you got one of my chips in there. I ran that company for 3 years before brought in management, and we took it public. And every Apple and Android stuff, they have one of our chips. A company like Bluebird Bio started as genetics by some first-rate people from MIT and Columbia and Harvard. And after a long year, we were the first one to become a gene therapy company, replacing bad genes with good genes in thalassaemic children who died usually within the first 3-4 years of their lives. Now they can live with our product. We replaced their bad genes with good ones. So I've been in the genetics part of it, in the bio part of it, and I only did 7 biotechnology companies, and knock on wood, they all worked out one way or the other. And a couple of examples I gave you. Anyway, the bottom line is been around and built some of the leading hospital management companies. We sold it to big hospital management companies, surgery centers, but the one that I'm really most proud of, and a lot of people should get credit for it, but I was the one who led a partnership that brought MRI to the business of medicine, because I used to use a machine in physics called nuclear magnetic resonance, for those of you who know the science involved. And I thought that was very applicable to medicine and human chemistry. If it's going to be good for the regular chemistry and physics, why not for human? And I was told how many no's. Usually you get a lot of no's in the beginning. And everybody says, well, it's not going to work. This is the story of my life. But anyway, after 3 years of very hard work and perseverance, we were able to get the right magnet and the rest of the stuff to turn this into, and change the name from nuclear something to MRI, magnetic resonance, as opposed to nuclear magnetic resonance. Anyway, so I've been around the business, and I've been building healthcare companies and technology companies, almost even-handed, but lately more in the healthcare, particularly healthcare technology companies. That's my background.
So Fred, thanks for the background on this. That's really amazing. So from a standpoint right now, what do you expect? I mean, regardless of what we hear in the news, but just from a practical approach today, what barriers exist in medicine or anything relating to the coronavirus that you think might be changed immediately under Trump's administration, using what he's done with the CDC as a proxy, right to try and things like that?
All right. I think the healthcare, unfortunately, there are lots of things wrong with it. There are a few good things that is going on. And I think this administration now has come on and inherited a system that was not its own making. And I'm not a pro-Trump or anti-anybody, and I'm very neutral in all this stuff. But you have to say the right thing as you see it. The bottom line is our whole drug discovery and approval, the whole thing is so outdated. For years, people were saying it, including me. It takes forever to do anything in bringing a drug out. We want to be safe, but not to kill everybody. Right now, that is an issue. We know certain drugs perhaps could work. We don't know, but it works. For instance, hydroxyquinone will work. People are using it. They used it supposedly successfully in China and Italy to the extent that they were helpful. And you're having a tough time applying that to the U.S. because this is indicated for malaria, but not for this virus. And so we have to go through a whole litany to figure out if this is safe for people and efficacious for this new virus. I think it's a good scientific discipline, but when you have such demand for it and people are dying and you haven't seen anything yet, I have a terrible feeling the next 2 or 3 weeks is going to be bearers of great bad news of all kinds, and so many people dying and worldwide. So it's the time to sort of take it on your hand and sort of say, look, if I'm going to die, I might as well try something. And under the compassionate use, we could use it, and I think something is going to happen in that. So we have a few tricks in our bags to use, and I'm hoping that some of that could be used, plus the research that is going on towards, like Gilead doing and others trying to come up with the vaccine and other forms of treatment. So one of the problems is this whole approach that has been taken, double blind and triple this and quadruple that is holding out. Some of it is absolutely necessary, but it's just we've gone kind of unaware of, we're acting unaware of the big problem that we are dealing today. I think if anybody, this president, some of the stuff he does off the cuff bothers the hell out of me, but I think this one, I hope for him to go somewhat off the cuff and make something happen there. So that's one piece. The other piece is all of us, we're not very disciplined as human beings because we're a creature of habits. So what is the aim of the country? It's to reduce mortality and morbidity. If you want to do that, it's very important to do some kind of hibernation so that, for instance, distancing is very important, because if you come across other people and you carry it, then you carry it to the third one. Anyway, the bottom line is that it just grows in terms of numbers. And our problem there is that whatever has happened so far is more than enough to cause a lot of death. We don't want more death. That's one thing. The second thing is that we don't want these death situation or very difficult situation peak. If you compare the Spanish, Spanish flu statistics, Philadelphia, for instance, and that whole state, they went on a party and didn't pay any attention. The system peaked in a very quick fashion, and they ran out of ammunition, medical ammunition. Whereas St. Louis and that whole state slowly flattened that curve and did that. And the difference was night and day. The number of deaths in Pennsylvania was triple or even more than that of, the Western state doing it. So the bottom line is that there is some reference to this thing, and it's really important when our officials say, please pay attention to it, do not do it. I mean, seeing these kids in Florida in the beachfront, it's the most ridiculous thing I've seen. They're gonna come home, they bring all that crap home, and next thing you know, they're elderly in the family all die. Because the ratio of elderly to young in terms of death is 9-to-1. That's how bad it is. So we need to reduce the mortality and morbidity. Social distancing, minimizing distance between people, and isolation is the way to go. The other 2 or 3 things that are very important for us to protect is protect the healthcare delivery people. We don't have this, and we don't have the ICUs. It's the worst thing in the world. People get there, they could be saved, but there's nobody to save them. So we need to save these people, so that they could do their job. We can't just everybody show up doing the stupid thing and then throwing themselves on the healthcare system. That's the problem in America. The healthcare system, unfortunately, around the world is the same. We go until we stop, until some disease happens, and then we throw ourselves into the medical system to solve it. We have no behavioral patterns, lifestyle that is going to do it. Rejuvenant, I created Rejuvenant with that in mind, to change people's lifestyle so that there will be healthy habits. The critical thing about this virus to remember, it all has to do with immune system. If you have a young immune system which is strong, this is nothing. You eat it up, chew it out, and throw it out, and you develop some immunity, you go forward. If you're older, usually that's when your immune system craps out a little bit. But if you kept it up, not necessarily. You could go through these episodes and survive it. So this immune system an immune deficiency that is very, very important. So we want to preserve these healthcare workers. We also want to preserve our healthcare system. However bad or good it is, at least there's some hospitals and what have you. We don't want to get all of that suddenly going up in the smoke in terms of people showing up. I was in China a couple of years ago doing some things there. People show up with a line that is like thousands of people every morning to get in to see the doctor or to do the hospital. We can't have that in this culture. There will be guns out there, people shooting each other. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on, but basically, those are the elements that I think we're not paying attention to. Ourselves as citizens to do the right thing, and our government have not paid any attention to this system that is going crazy. And I'll add a third thing to it later when we come back with telemedicine, why that is such a solution. I've seen it long ago. I think you saw it, Sal. And we need to do that. I think once this is finished, you won't believe how much everything is going to happen.
So we're probably going to be moving into some sort of isolation soon, right? I mean, it's going to be a new way of, I think, interacting. I think
I'm already in isolation in New York State.
So do you think the government is going to pay a lot of attention to this now?
It's really paying a lot of attention.
Okay.
Yeah, it's paying a lot of attention. I mean, I can just tell. These poor guys are working around the clock, and all I hear is complain and complain and complain. I just, even if a lot of it is true, it's the wrong time. Either do help or get out of the way, and these news people are driving me nuts. I used to have such a respect. My wife is a newswoman.
That's right.
So I have a lot of respect for this. But the bottom line is that as soon as these guys start saying anything, saying, did you do this thing wrong 3 months ago? And this is ridiculous. Get him out of here.
To me, this feels like the rush of the nuclear age, the dawn in the 50s, if you think about it. From working with you and other people on this call who, Bill and many people we know, I really feel as though that this is like an arms race right now, much to the defense, not just of our borders, but perhaps internally, as nations. I think that this is something that's going to be probably culturally pretty impactful, probably something we haven't seen maybe close to 100 years.
There's no doubt this is going to be a turning point in history of this nation and around the globe. I think this is the race to win. And I think we can do that. Although we're kind of late a little bit, we can do that. But you're right. I think some of the things that is going to happen is this. First of all, people are going to get used to this kind of conference call. Look at us. We don't get together in person. So Zoom and companies like that, telecommunication is going to become the norm. There's no reason for you to drive, park, go all over the place, go to an office, pay all that money for the office space, and then, some things could be still done and it's some elegance to an office, but most things could be done away from it. As you know, my companies have recently been all nomadic. I have people all over the place, and we're more connected, doing more things than we ever done before. As a result, I've been building the recent companies for a fraction of what I built in the past.
Yeah, and we have too, thanks to you. Yes.
No, really, that's exactly what has happened. For me to build this massive thing that is called Rejuvenant platform, it would have been at least 8 or 10 times the price. I've done it before, So I used to have 3 floors on Madison Avenue. I now have a small office, and I've got everybody all over the world. It's fantastic. We have from India to China to West Coast to, you name it. I'm from everywhere. Toronto. So we find the talent where they are, and by the way, this is very important for medicine. We have 1 million doctors in the United States. 900,000 of them are active. Okay? Now, we have these doctors in clusters, various places. So we have this law, which the president just changed it, which is that you could not, as a telemedicine company, as we have one, as you know, part of Rejuvenant is the acquisition I made. They have 250 doctors in 50 states, right? Now, the doctor from Kansas City could not do anything for New York and vice versa. They just flattened that law. Forget about what the state laws are. And all these people who just were able to stick them on so that they can protect themselves do nothing. Now, one of our doctors could write a prescription from New York to California to Timbuktu. So it doesn't matter. So this is the kind of thing that we will come to change. We can take these, there's always a supposedly shortage of doctors and nurses. It really isn't if we do this efficiently, if you have electronics to do it, which is one thing is going to come out of this.
And yeah, I think so too. And I think that's just going to be even more acute as time goes on. When did they flatten? Oh, what was exactly happened recently that flattened that law that the federal, I guess it's a federal mandate that superseded the state?
No, actually, it's presidential, whatever, that he just said, we got to do this, and they did it. So it's 48 hours ago this happened.
Okay, so that's even better for guys like us. That's amazing.
Yeah, the same thing is going to happen to education and teaching. Now the kids are at home, getting homeschooled. They're having fun. We have plenty of electronics. They don't need to go. And all these conversations about student to teachers ratio, all that will go away. You know, you can really reach a lot. Anyway, I think at least we're thinking through these issues. So our society, I'm trying to give you this as a part of supporting what you said. Our society is going through a change. And when it comes out, it will be stronger, it will be different. And I think a lot of this, a lot of people will say, wow, sometimes from the ashes, greatest thing to come out. So we're going to rise, everybody around the world. I'm really very hopeful about that. As long as we can survive much of this, because I'm afraid a lot of people are going to die through this whole next 3, 4, 5 weeks at least.
Yeah, no, that's something. So what, are there any networks right now? I guess it would be Rejuvenant, but is that a platform that, how are you guys able to capture this? What has been going on with you for the past week that you've been so busy and you've been on the phone?
Yeah. Okay, so let me try to lay out what it looks like and what we look like and why we're so excited. I'm excited for everybody in this business because so many, in fact, some of my brethren from the other competing companies, just keep writing me emails saying, you know, we were thinking this. Now the world is coming to think like us. Telemedicine is basically has been dedicated to the sick care system, which, as you know from the past conversation, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. We only go see doctors when we are sick. We don't go see them when we are healthy. And our doctors are trained to understand sickness, but not health. Unfortunately, I saw both of my kids who are some of the best doctors that I know. They went to the Ivy League medical schools and what have you. I saw them getting trained. They get trained on diabetes and heart problem as the problems develop. So it's a reactive system. It's not proactive system. Rejuvenant tried to stroke into the proactive side of this thing. And then I thought, I'll get both of them together. So Rejuvenant has got an illness and wellness on the same platform approach. So you're the same human being. We try to get you to homeostasis and keep you there, or keep you homeostasis and healthy without going there. And mainly building your immune system and helping you defend anything else that comes to you. So that's us. Then there is a piece that is telemedicine. This is just doctors, the same thing that you did in the sick care system, but now on telephone and in video. There is a need for that in disease times like this. But beyond that, we think is the best thing to do is to keep your patient healthy, just like this distancing you're trying to do, as opposed to then, you know, getting sick and then coming to the doctor. So one of the switches going to go on is people are going to find out after this that it's very important to do really an ounce of prevention, but more importantly, good living. Forget about automatically comes with prevention. Prevention automatically comes with it. That you would you really have a great chance of living a long and a quality life. So there is a graph that I always show. I know you remember. The kid that is born in America, through the age of 30, we become very strong. Our immune system, our strength, the chi, the prana, however you want to call it, becomes very strong. And then from 30 on, it will basically go downhill. But a percent, we lose our strength. Basically, our immune systems basically crops out 1% a year. So by the time let's say you become 80 years old, that's 50 years after the peak of 30, roughly, you're at the 50% of your strength when you were 30. This is why the elderly is much more susceptible to these diseases. Okay, so now that is if you live the average American life, eat average American food, and do nervousness, running around like crazy, and A-type, and and all those things that comes with it. I can go into details of it. So if you live the Rejuvenant promised, or people who in the field are promising that, you don't drop that much. You drop slowly. So you go straight out and you live longer, maybe a decade or two more. In fact, a major Harvard study says that if you do what we're recommending, if you pay attention to these simple things, an average person lives at least 15 to 20 years longer. A very, very important study that came out. It's a meta study. It was very interesting because we've been saying it, and then sorry. So what I'm trying to say is the world is going to change and going to come around our way, which is that we have to realize lifestyle medicine is more important than anything else. Because with our current system, when you get sick, then they attend to you. You're a very good diagnostician. Say, you got diabetes, and then they give you some pills to go home. And then they give you some more pills over the years, and then you die of that disease. And the pills only remove the symptom, but they do not do anything to the underlying disease. So there's no curative approach to our system. I think we're going to be focusing on this thing. This social distancing and this whole idea of how you live, what you do, and how you protect yourself is going to come home, and people hopefully will pay more attention to it. So that's sort of, telemedicine is now a lot of the same old practice of medicine, but on telephone. It's going to be very effective for things like this, for a lot of things like this. And so it's a part of the healthcare going forward. But I think more and more that the proactive or wellness part of it is going to come into the picture. So let me stop there because I can go on and on, but basically I hope I answered it.
No, you did. You did a wonderful job with that. You did a wonderful, wonderful job with that. What do you see right now as far as coming from Dr. Fauci and all of that and those people who we're relying on? Do you think that they're going to start telling the public, hey, we're setting up some sort of an intermediary portal like Rejuvenant, so someone in California can be seen by someone in New York or vice versa, or around the world? Do you see that intellectual capital start to sort of amass itself and become more and more proven as it gets experienced out, so to speak?
It's possible, and I would welcome it. At this time of emergency, any doctor could get on, but they're not trained to be teledoc. But basically, any doctor could come on, and that's what they're trying to do. So any way we can reduce the mortality and morbidity potential in here, it's welcome. So, but I think I've had more calls and more deals coming our way in the last 2 weeks than ever in the whole history of the company.
Hey, you got quite the full dance ticket, I've heard. Every time I get you on the phone, Desiree always says you're busy. So
yeah, unfortunately, it's just been contracts after contracts and all that. But
which is why we're so honored to have you join us today, Fred. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, really. I feel it's my duty. Listen, I started this company not because of money. I started it because I thought I have something to contribute. I've learned a lot over these years. The world has been nice to me. I can give someone something. So our system has developed after 3 iteration and 5 years of nonstop work on top of another 10 years prior to this that led me to it. After those 3 iterations, we can now, for $10 a month and $10 copay every time you want to talk to our doctors, are getting healthy 90% of the time. You don't need anything else. So you don't even need insurance. What do you need insurance for $10 out of your pocket?
Yeah,
so we're very excited by this. And I think we're going to be hopefully one of the many that is going to come our way. So I feel, this is for my way to bring sunshine to people's life, particularly those who can't afford it. And as I know from the past, when you bring sunshine to other people's life, you can't keep it away from you. So I'm hoping that some of it come our way, and our company will be known and hopefully prized for what we are doing.
I see that happening. That's without question. Can we open it up for questions, AJ? Because I know there's some people who've been texting me, and I'm looking at my phone right now.
Hey guys, it's Brendan. Can you hear me?
Brendan,
we can hear you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to. Good to see you, Fred. I just wanted to ask about, as we advance into telemedicine, as this is starting to get a lot of traction, just your thoughts on the challenges with triaging things like what we're going through now through a telemedicine platform, and how you see that hopefully becoming less of a barrier to success in fighting these types of things.
Yep. Very good, Brendan. Good to hear from you. Look, it's very exciting because the system, telemedicine, is perfect for this thing. Let me take you through. We just put out our COVID-19 procedure for our doctors and our members. So you call in, you wake up in the middle of the night, and you feel like maybe you've got a little bit of temperature, or that you feel kind of achy or whatever. You think, oh, it's like the old cold, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's COVID-19. You're worried. You call us, and we ask our computers, as you know, the robot will ask you a few questions to get you prepared to talk to the doc. So we got all of that from you, and we know your background because you've been a member. We got the digital record of what you did and the diseases. This is so critical. The difference between our system and typical telemedicine is that we know a lot about you. We know that you've got diabetes. We know that you got this problem or that problem. And that is a different prognosis or diagnosis than just you calling on a telemedicine line, let's say Teladoc, who are, by the way, great friends of mine. In fact, those two guys who run the company used to work for me at Oxford. So I know them very well. And they're doing very well. Their stock is climbing like crazy. And so anyway, what it is that you call, you don't feel well, you call in the middle of the night. Our doctors then proceed to ask you some questions on top of what the robot asked you. And a number of things we ask you is that, do you cough? Yes. Is it lower respiratory and upper respiratory? Some of the questions will give us that sense. If it's lower respiratory, it's important for us to pay attention. We then ask you, do you have a thermometer? Yes. You put it in. What is the temperature? Okay, it's very interesting. You're 20 years old, you got this temperature? You could go up to 104, there's no problem. But if it's elderly, you're beyond, after 65, 97 is the cutoff. So if you tell me you're 98, 99 in temperature, and we say, you know what, between the lower respiratory and this, you got to see the doctor. You got to be seen with the doctor. So that's when we feed to the system. So we then call the emergency room, and they'll take our calls because of the doctor conversation. Then we usher you into the system. We didn't waste 100 calls like that who didn't need to go, because, in fact, Rishi was on a call. I was with him just 2 days ago when the lady called in and she said all these things, and we went through the whole protocol. He went through the whole protocol as a doctor, and she said, "Oh, that's good, but I still would like to see a doctor." She says, "Well, I can't recommend to you, dude. You're going to clog up the system. You don't have any reason to call a doctor. It would be great if I have a test." Well, everybody wants to have a test. What are you going to do with the test? You just clog up the system. Anyway, the bottom line is that it is this sort of triaging and working through ahead of the healthcare system out there in terms of hospitals and ICUs, what have you, before they get clogged. This is the kind of help we can give. And it's happening very often these days. Did I answer you, Brendan?
Brendan, did he answer your question?
You did,
I think he did.
Yeah, it did. That was very helpful.
Okay,
Thank you, Fred.
All right. Next question is from Justin Lee. The Justin Lee.
Put me right on the spot, Sal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Fred, thanks for doing this. I know you're a busy man. My question is, I see a lot of disagreement, naysayers, doubting Thomas, whatever expression you want to use, about people who are downplaying the seriousness of this. They claim, hey, we're looking at projections. These are only projections. For the record, I'm on the same side of the fence as you. But what would you say to these people who are arguing that these are only projections and we don't know how bad that this issue is going to get? Because sadly, there's a lot of people who are doing that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think the honest answer is what Tony Fauci gave, which is that, listen, depending on how we do and how you do, so as human beings in 350 million people, if you all rush up and do the stupid stuff and don't pay attention to it, don't isolate yourself, we're going to have a lot of deaths. I cannot tell you that, so it depends on your behavior. If we don't do our job, which is to really tell people what solves the problem and what clogs the whole plumbing work, then we're not doing it. If we don't look for the drugs that could come in there and help it, then we're not doing it. So I see for the first time, I think American people are fantastic this way. I think we're going to have I remember the bad days when 9/11 happened. I was in New York City. I couldn't believe the amount of kindness, the amount of cooperation. Let me give you food. You're downtown. It was amazing. I think once people get this sense that they're in it together and this thing is bad, it is bad. We didn't have anything like this. There are 4 coronaviruses: the typical flu, the influenza types, and then you've had SARS, and worse than all of them was MERS, which is the Middle Eastern one, and then this one. MERS was the worst. This is next worst of all the flus. So it's not something to screw around with. So the idea is, if we learn that, so it'll be very good. Now, we don't want to sugarcoat it either, because, I think Trump did a very good job in many ways, but in some ways, he's talking like a Wall Street guy. That's not going to cut it half of the time. People want to know that you're empathetic, that you're, not that I'm saying he's not. He's trying to not to let people run to the bank, So I can understand what he's trying to do. At the same time, we need to really be very straightforward with people. Now, some of it is out there, but it doesn't take a lot to really understand why what they're saying is right or wrong. And more importantly, how you should really conduct yourself to contribute to this solution to this problem.
Yeah, I like Sal's community because it's a very educated community, and I am, doing what I believe to be my civic duty and taking this very seriously. But I'm shocked at some of the people that I know who, some of them are educated people who are not taking this seriously. And I also hear positions from people saying that loss of life is not worth the potential economic fallout that we're going to see. And obviously you can't place a dollar amount on that, but I guess I'm making more of a statement than asking a question, but I just find it shocking the behavior of some of them.
It's a good statement. I mean, I would say I'm share with you. I think $1 trillion that they just talked about, it's a drop in the pocket. It's going to be probably 5 trillion based on this calculation I did, and basically on Italian numbers versus Chinese numbers, and leveling it on our people, our population. And those who really, I don't care how educated you are, if you're stupid, you can be educated stupid this way. You don't have the horse sense. But you go out there, you expose yourself. This virus doesn't care whether you're a Harvard graduate or not. It doesn't give a damn. It just kills you. And so they're going to pay for it. If you don't sequester yourself, really sequester yourself, stay inside, particularly if you're older, you are absolutely essentially you might as well kill yourself. If you get it as an elderly, as I said, it's 9 to 1 ratio who survives it. And it's Italian experience is that 70-80% of them die. So it's just like horrible. So this
Thank you, Fred.
$1 trillion, I don't know where it's going to go. Now, let's look at the other side of it, because while people, like I say, of course, human life is so much more valuable than economic economically. But the other side of it is that if we did spend something like $5 trillion, guess what? You got to pay for it. And the recovery, unfortunately, is going to be much more difficult than we all think today. So the question is, when the world settles finally on this, what are we coming back to economically? How do we do it? So we got to draw this very carefully. So if we attend to this carefully, we're not going to have a lot of people who die on us and who really get into difficult situation. And if you don't do it, then the payback and the economic problem is just huge. So nobody could give you the answer really, because we're for the first time going through it. But those are the variables.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Nazem. My question pertains more to this talk about there being possibly reinfections or secondary infections if we suppress the disease quickly right now, and then maybe seeing in a couple of months when the weather changes again to fall, we'll see the surge again. I'd like to ask your opinion on that.
My opinion is based on what I read, what scientists have done and all that. It is always the case that when you have a virus and you experience it, you develop immunity. So the chances for you having not to get it again or not to repeat it is very high. In other words, your immune system gets readjusted because all the T cells in the immune system, the gammas and all that, start fighting, settling the issues and have the antibodies to really fight it going forward. Now, there is a possibility like MERS sort of showed that, but we didn't have, it stopped very quickly, fortunately. But as a result, we also didn't have an experience to see what the reinfection was. But it is pretty good chance that we will not have reinfection problem. Once in a great while, something may happen, but I think it's pretty substantial science behind it that reinfection is not going to be an issue. We can't play roulette with luck. I mean, I would still. Here's a very important point. Even when you even when you went through the disease like the young people, and now you're free of it, that doesn't mean you're not carrying you're not the carrier still, just because you're moving around the society. That is the biggest problem. So they think, oh, I'm scot-free. I can now go and do whatever I want. I can go to the bars. Well, it's tough.
Is that one of the reasons why we're seeing this talk about having the more controlled spread? Whereas if we suppress it right now, we might see it pop back up again in the future with the same speed and everything?
I don't think it is related. I think what we are trying to suppress is to level the curve as much as we can. It's a Gaussian curve peaking so quickly when you don't pay any attention to it. You know what I mean? Now we want to have a very, very drawn-out Gaussian curve. Early on, I discussed the Spanish flu. In Pennsylvania, they didn't pay attention. They peaked like crazy in a short time. They ran out of everything, and people were dying left and right. But in the case of St. Louis and that state, they flattened it out. They slowly fed into the system, and they did sequestering and what have you. That doesn't mean the people who had the infection, the rate in both were almost equal, but the people who died of the infection in Pennsylvania was bigger. So that's the distinction that I want to make from what I understand. I want to remind everybody today is the first day of spring, if you haven't paid attention. So the vernal equinoxes have come together. That means we could bury the old winter with all its problems, including this virus. I am absolutely convinced that if we could just do this and go forward, all the things that Sal was talking about and we just chatted about, a lot of these improvements is going to come to our culture. We really will inherit a better world. Just this FDA system cleaning up, it's going to be unbelievable.
I have a question, and it has nothing to do with this, but it draws on your experience being a very experienced hedge fund manager. And that is, this is a loaded question. Do you think that the public's trust in public equities has been ruined or do you think it will come back?
I think it will come back in a different way, and a very serious way too. I think one of the things we just learned, at least it was fantastic learning for me, is that if you look at the issues, the things that are solving the problems and going forward are technology. So I think a lot, and in fact, they did not suffer as bad as some of the other sector, like, the airlines and all the problems that we know. So there's going to be a much more respect for technologically driven ideas and sociologically sensitive ideas that a technology could solve. So I think that's going to come back. The market has always come back in the past. The question is the length of time that it takes to come back. That's what I was really attending to. If you spend 5 trillion or 2 trillion, it's going to be a while to get that back. But I think it's not going to be a V shape right away. We're going to go through this valley more like a U shape, and then I think it's going to go up. So I feel, and then so much stuff before this whole thing happened. We had some incredible new development in the economy that was unbelievable, from employment to new areas. And we got 5G. It's got the same problem. We are so far behind China. There's no reason in 5G. And there's a whole way of coming back at it. So I think people are going to find that. We have quantum computing coming at us at the speed of sound. It's going to be here later next year. You're going to stop Apple offering 5G phone and then somebody using that in a quantum computing environment and coming up with ideas. I mean, you can't stop ideas. That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Some of this is going to kill some of the, to me, to have Heinz to have a 24 or 27 PE was ridiculous when somebody the same PE PE is different than the PE. It's not the same.
No, it's not. And then it keeps moving too. The accounting moves, and then when you lower interest rates by 200 basis points, that encourages stock buybacks, and there's a whole other moral dilemma with that too as well. But
you'll like this conversation we had with the Morgan Stanley guys. They had their group, and I was talking to them, and they keep telling me how good the airlines are. I said, "Are you crazy? This industry is asset poor generally and equipment rich. They have to buy a lot of equipment. They have to buy where they park. They depend on gasoline to go in there. They fly a lot of empty seats if you don't watch out. There's everything that could go wrong. I wouldn't own an airline stock in a million years. They never did. Not that some of them will not go up. If you're a trader, that's fine, which Wall Street loves for you to trade. CNBC all day long is trying to either push you to sell it or push you to buy it,
It's all commissions. That's why I have the huge, Charles and Maria Schwab Hall, right after JP Morgan Healthcare. We all go over to that museum.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's all fees, turning around, right?
Anyway.
You can have a $250 million gallery, if you're Charles Schwab. But
I don't know if he answered you, but the point is that I really think that you're going to be, I'm an optimist, but hopefully.
No, I am too, and that's why I wanted you to speak, because I think a lot of people can use that optimism today in a way where I don't think that there's really many outlets of credibility where people can actually come to and say, it's a lot of what I'm reading on social media, Instagram, the news, red, blue, whatever. Is this real? How am I filtering this out? Because it's only adding to a lot of anxiety, angina, and paranoia.
Yeah. I'd like to ask the question with somebody who's very serious and sure of himself or herself. Says, how many things have you built? How many people you employed, and how many ideas you really was a part of, not even invented? What have you done? I want to see that, your experience. Have you run anything? Like most of the small town lawyers that go to Washington, they become our senators. Christ, they're all lawyers. They're the goddamn thing. They're nothing. They haven't built nothing, So tell me something where you had to sweat on a Friday night to write a paycheck.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Yeah.
Middle class and people who work for wages, they're not hiring anybody. People who take the risk and have the money to take the risk are the only ones who hire. So, and I think it should be very wonderful to people who don't have that. And I totally believe in that. And our social system got to be helpful to these people. I'd love to help them. But you can help them tremendously by the right healthcare, by the right this, by the right that. So anyway, that's my opinion.
We are not involved in the public markets whatsoever. We don't play in the public stocks. We don't do any of that. And why, drawing upon my skill sets in private equity, is that there is just a lot more value to be had by investing in people who have done this 60 times or 12 times, as some people on this phone, or other people who actually have the scars on their backs. And we wanted to put together a structure where there was very conservative money, but they could also participate in what I call managed upside. And managed upside is, making sure you're in the right industries, making sure you're with the right people, because that's really all that matters. It's really, a lot of people like to get into in-depth analysis and all this, but I've never seen a single company, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, hit a pro forma, right? It's always the character of the operator. And even the books going back to, I got one today. It talks about, Lazar, but I was reading The Merchant Bankers, and it was all about, experience and what these people do in rough times and character and stuff like that. So we put together a managed product where people could participate in the special situations. And really we've done that because we've been, really sticking to our rules, and that is just working with world-class operators, experienced entrepreneurs, in industries where, it is really a higher barrier of entry to get into, unlike discretionary things that you would see maybe on TV like Shark Tank, but where we could really make much more of a measurable impact too as well. When we started moving away, we've always been doing real estate, but the market got kind of rich, and as you know, we gave back a ton of money because the trade changed. We noticed that there was a lot more opportunity working with the same families who were, as I said before, who were watching me grow up professionally, and who have helped me. And right now what I'm doing is the community that we're putting together is really focused on a structure which is more of an alliance of a bunch of families who have been working with us and we've been working with together. And we're transitioning from going from what people usually call a private equity shop to what we call a multifamily office, because capital is a commodity today. Everybody knows that. Anybody can go out there and raise money. And I think that's ended as of, unfortunately, the coronavirus. But people who share values and views are much more driven to not just work together financially, which is usually the lowest form of partnership, but it allows what I call cross-pollination between Fred and maybe Bill, who's on this call, or someone else who's an oncologist, and it really allows us to grow as a community of like-minded individuals who are driven by a single purpose, whereas my job principally is to insulate these people from the risk as much as possible through negotiations and dealings. Is that a pretty good way of explaining it, AJ?
Yeah,
absolutely. Sal, thank you very much. That's exactly what I was where I wanted to go with this, and how I wanted to wrap this up, because I wanted people to understand how we think differently and why the fear we're seeing in the market right now is not what we're experiencing here at Dandrew Partners. Yeah. As a matter of fact, just the opposite, because Sal saw this coming. We saw this coming, maybe not in this particular form, but we knew we'd have an economic downturn at some point, and we knew we wanted to make certain that us as a firm, the families that we worked with, the professionals that we worked with, and the investments that we made all had an insulation against this, and it's turning out to be true.
Can I say something on that may be helpful?
Yes.
The way I think. As Shakespeare says, there's a tide in the affairs of men. Catching the tide on its summit, you'll go places with it. We were on that tide. I really believed it. And with the numbers that were economically coming and things that were going on in our country, although there was a lot of discord, So this thing is just suddenly got stopped by this virus. But this virus is not an economic downturn. It's a biological downturn. And when its course finishes, and it will finish, unfortunately it may finish some of us in the process of death and morbidity, but then it's going to resume. That's why when you asked me the question, so it's not, you got to think, you got a clear thinking about, is it an economic problem? No, it's not. It's really, it creates an economic problem for a short term, but I think we're going to get back to the trajectory. I wanted to add that at least I sit back and I look at this thing every day and I say, is this really something I got to worry about? Change my world. But do the good job you're doing and you'll be fine. And private equity is the best thing, best antidote for this.
I appreciate that, and I concur with you on that wholeheartedly. Fred, I think we'll leave it on a high note. We'll be hearing from Fred more, I'm sure, with a bunch of people. But I am very appreciative that you took the time. I know you're very busy, but you're giving us an hour and 5 minutes, not to mention setup time. We're extremely appreciative of this. Thank you. Thank you very much. AJ will validate your part on the way out. And if anybody has any questions, you can always drop a line. You guys know how to get
If anybody has any questions, send the check.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
We'll make sure you have the wiring instructions, everybody. On that note.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being on this call. Thank you very much for joining us. We wish you to all stay healthy, happy, safe, and we will always be in touch here at Dandrew Partners.